Hi everyone, welcome to my review of David Lean's The Bridge on the River Kwai from 1957. So yes, finally here, once again, David Lean picture to talk about here, and yes, here it is on Blu-ray. Yes, I'm really excited to talk about this film, and more Lean films, of course. Yes, and of course, spoilers alert. We'll say that, as always, mostly anyway, I do kind of get into details about particular deaths and stuff, and this is not going to be a massive review like some of my other ones, but just be warned, there will be some talking about the events in the film and particular deaths perhaps. So if you haven't seen the film, highly recommend this one. This is not to be missed, and preferably yes, watch the film first and then come back to this review, because we'll be kind of mentioning some things I don't want to spoil for you viewers, but yes, here we are, and this is a film. Of course, Great Expectations is the only Lean film that I've reviewed actually on my channel. So that's interesting. That was back in February, and that's just one of my favourite stories of all time, and just happens to be for me the best adaptation of that. Kind of in cinema, I think that I've seen anyway, and I don't imagine that changing. It really is just one of my favourites, as I've said in that review. Check that out if you want. That's a film that I really have loved for many years. I saw that as a kid, and I love that film so much. And this film, of course, this, Lawrence of Arabia, Brief Encounter, of course, behind me there, both of them three really. Most of the time, you get some other ones, maybe Dr. Zhivago, battle it out for the top spot, kind of thing here. And this is yes, definitely an extremely popular film, just one of the most iconic and loved films. Critically, loads of people love this film. Very respected film here, and yes, what an interesting film this is, and one that I could talk about for a while. But I think I've got a lot of reviews that I'm doing, and also I think it's nice to kind of leave a lot of the things to kind of just maybe discuss it in the comments. It's a film that actually I've only seen it twice now, and I first saw it back in 2017 November. December kind of thing here. I watched a few. I watched for the first time Brief Encounter, and I rewatched, of course, Lawrence. December of that year. And, Great Expectations again. Rewatching that. There's quite a few that I got, and also bought quite a few. Basically the rest of his films after Lawrence. All these epics. So yes, I think it's definitely going to be me watching a lot of Lean films over the next few months. A lot of them never seen. Dr. Zhivago, Passage to India, Ryan's Daughter. All these ones I've never seen, but I've owned since I done that kind of mini kind of marathon perhaps back in 2017. So yes, this one I'd never seen up until that point, and it had been on my watch list for many years actually, and I just happened to get to Lawrence first, and I was more desperate to see that perhaps, and yes, this one is also for me a stunning piece of work, and yes, it's a masterpiece in my opinion. No hesitation there. I think what a wonderful film, and just a complex film, constantly for me anyway, compelling. I understand this is not a film that everyone will love, because it is, of course, it's a war film. It's kind of a lot of the time spent in the camp. POWs, British POWs going to this camp at the beginning on by train to this Japanese camp here, and basically forced to build this bridge, Burma, and connecting different points for the Japanese, this camp, and basically Colonel Saito is basically the head of trying to get them to build this and to kind of just do it, and they can't escape. He says it's basically a film where it starts off in the camp, and it kind of branches off of kind of the hour mark really. People escape, as we know, and of course one being Shears, Commander Shears, played by William Holden, stand out in this film in my opinion. Really amazing, and of course Alec Guinness is basically the Colonel Nicholson in charge of the British, and he is the main character in many regards, and he is the one. I think he gives the best performance out of everyone in the film, and I think just the themes, the essential themes in this, and the kind of the tone and the spirit really is all, he embodies that, I think, more than anyone, and I think Alec Guinness is just one of the greatest actors of all time. I really love Alec Guinness. I think he's just so good. Even in Star Wars, you got that little bonus of him appearing in Star Wars after many years of working, in cinema. He was going from the 30s, a load of lean films, of course, big epic films, other comedies and things, films I've never seen. And then you got the bonus of him being in a film like Star Wars, as one of the most iconic characters. He done it all, he done so much, and I love so many of his roles. Just amazing, really amazing actor, and I think this is one of his his many great roles. Performance is stunning, so controlled, so memorable in this film, and just the warmth that I feel from every performance, really, from him, and just wow, what a film. I don't. If I was asked, of course, for whatever reason, is this on the level, perhaps, as a film like Great Expectations, Lawrence of Arabia, etc.? I would say not for me. This is a film that I know it's been placed among the very finest films. I don't quite put it there. I don't think it's one of the top 100, for example. But that's just me. I think it doesn't really need to be. I do agree that Lawrence of Arabia is. We'll get to that. But and this is not my favourite David Lean film. I will say that now. It doesn't quite go into the heights of cinema like I think a few of his films do. Particularly for something like Lawrence of Arabia. It's not on that level, but it is in itself such a, first of all, well-rounded film. Everything in this just really to a standard of a masterful degree. The cinematography, the editing, this script, really something else. I think it's just constantly. There's so much in this that is just constantly compelling. The dynamics at first, this is a film that kind of the first half, is something quite different to the second half of the film. Of course, Colonel Saito and of course Nicholson. It starts off more of their dynamics, and they're kind of against each other, and the kind of the ways in which they exert their kind of what they think is power, and they're not backing down, and it's kind of this struggle between them, and their sides, perhaps, if you want to call it that, and how they're just constantly kind of trying to get one up on each other. I feel, and just constantly, just not backing down, and just this determination, I feel, between both sides. And I think in that sense, it's first of all really well balanced. I think the kind of the humanity and the actual the complexity. It's not a biased film in any regard, and it's just something that both sides, both of these characters in particular, it's something where it's so well balanced, and I just love the interactions. The scene, of course, where they kind of eat together, and kind of share conversations early on. That's something that I've really loved. I think, and seeing it, this is my first rewatch. I picked up on even more interesting scenes throughout this film, especially early on. But then again, I forgot kind of how it changes, perhaps, around that 60-minute mark. Certainly halfway through the film, this is something it's very different. It branches off, the scope kind of broadens. You have these different missions and things going on in the background, never really returning to the kind of the tone, the flow at all, really, or of the kind of the set, the dynamics here, the kind of the setup and the dynamics and the kind of the way in which the characters interact. It's very different. It never returns to that. But I think I actually prefer the second half. So it's a film that I love from the beginning, and it just kind of gets better and better for me until the very ending act. And the kind of, I'd say the last 25 minutes, which is really stand out. I'm not denying that the ending actually is one of the best in cinema. It really is. Just, I think the way that Lean brings it together, and all these performances, just peaking really in the final act. And this is when one of my favourite moments is when Nicholson is talking about just reflecting on his life to Saito and stuff, and that's just a stunning scene, and a wonderful way to kind of bring this whole arc to a close, just before the kind of explosive, as we know, finale, the actual bridge being destroyed, actually happening, of course. One of the best moments really in cinema. That it's just wow, what the use of tension before that, the stakes, of course, and the kind of the flip that happens, throughout the film, the realization, as a viewer, that you kind of different sides, different characters, different kind of teams and stuff are, viewing things very, very differently. And the kind of the whole way that Nicholson, and many others, of course, are actually kind of becoming proud, of this bridge. And then, of course, there's this mission going on in the background, involving characters such as Commander Shears, William Holden, of course, who are then sent in to destroy the bridge, without, of course, Nicholson, for example, knowing, and then that kind of there are moments in the final act, when he's just, it's such a kind of wow, what a kind of a tense sequence, and of course him realizing just as he's kind of done it, what has he done? That moment is just genius stuff. That is cinema. That is just wow. How to bring something to a close, so well, and so it's not something that is really a happy ending in many regards at all. It's very, very sad, very kind of disturbing actually as well, and just this whole way in which Nicholson, of course, his death at the end, and that, of course, that moment that happens there, it really is something else, and just so many emotions as a viewer, to kind of witness that, and then what it all means, and just how just the kind of the different emotions, of course, that's going through Nicholson. I think Alec Guinness perfectly captures this character, and these different emotions, the mixed feelings towards this, and he's torn. He's torn about kind of. I think what really this deals with so well is loyalty, actually, and just how complex it is. It's portrayed in the film. It's something that comes full circle, actually. Just in the final moments, you don't really get the whole. You don't really know where perhaps the film is going, actually, or what it kind of means until the very, very final moments. It really, really hits you, and I think it's just from start to finish. It is a masterpiece. It is one of the, a film that's among the finest. I wouldn't put it in my top 100, but it is certainly on my favourite films list. It's definitely in my top, kind of 500, 300, I would say, definitely. And I think just, one of Lean's masterpieces for me. I think the film's structure is really, really something very unique. It's one that, really, as I say, it's quite, I think, surprising, perhaps, how the structure is so different, and the way it kind of just becomes something very, very different, especially, that hour mark, really. But the second half is very, very different to the first, and just the way it kind of, it has so much kind of threads, in the background, and at times, you're following, for example, Shears for so long, and going off different locations. It's such a kind of adventure feeling that you get, after the first hour as well. And I think that's key. But yes, how that's going on, and then you've got the, kind of at times, almost forgetting, I feel Nicholson, and then kind of subtly coming back, to other characters, and it's just so. It's handled with such, kind of control. I think David Lean never kind of focusing for too long on certain threads, but it's something where subtly weaving it. I feel this is very, very interesting. This narrative is it's so unique, and it doesn't kind of detract from the investment. By the end of it, it all comes together, and it all kind of comes to a close. You get enough time with every kind of character really that's essential to the film. And even though the structure is very, very risky, it seems, kind of very, very, very unique. I feel it really, it doesn't, kind of detract from that final, the emotions I feel from the overall film, and the kind of the messages, the themes, just the raw power that you get, at the end of the film. And I think this film, of course, David Lean, and if I didn't kind of say this in my Great Expectations review, he is one of my favourite directors. Only seen 5 of his films at the moment, but Oliver Twist as well. I've not seen that for many, many years. His version, and I think that's probably the best version actually of Oliver Twist. And yes, I think, of course, Brief Encounter, Lawrence of Arabia, Great Expectations. This film, wow, they're all so amazing, and I think his very, very best film, that's why, especially your best two really, is why he's so high on my list. He's certainly in my top 20 directors already, and I think the way he shoots his films and his style and his the way the films are edited, are absolutely genius. I feel that this film, the way it's shot is stunning. There's not a single moment where I'm not just in awe of this, and the atmosphere, the kind of the way that the weather is used as well. The temperature, the heat, kind of how it. For example, at the beginning, when Nicholson is put in the box, of course, and kind of put in very bad conditions here, and the way this is shot, the way that time passes as well, the editing here, and just the way that David Lean kind of incorporates the surroundings into this to make it kind of an experience, a very harsh one. I think very intense. This is key, and it really actually the way he plays with time in this film, which is of course an essential thing a filmmaker has to do, from whatever kind of way he's doing it, playing with time, kind of extending time or kind of contracting, time. I think it's really essential for a director to do this, and in this film, he does something very, very unique in the way this is, kind of the way it's shot and edited, and how it plays into this whole experience, and the kind of the visuals playing into the narrative as well, and the whole experience of this, the kind of grinding times experience early on, and then the satisfying nature, but then you don't get that full satisfaction at the end. You get the complex feeling, the kind of really, really something else, this film, and very, very, very interesting. And I think the characters pretty much all great. There's some people, of course, that are more just in the background. There's many, many, of course, characters, many extras as well. But James Donald is a standout, I feel. He's a great actor as well. He was, of course, The Great Escape. I've seen that with him in there, and he's just great. And in this film, very memorable as well. You've got Saito, of course, although not playing as much of a role in the second half, but his time in the film, truly a great character. One that a lot of humanity, I feel, was given to this character, despite him being in charge of this POW camp. Of course, and our protagonist, and now the people that were meant to root for, of course, again, of course, led by this character, and he's quite a harsh character, but still I felt sympathy for this character, and that's due to, of course, Lean and the performances as well. Just across the board, very sincere, and just fully investing, I feel, and yes, just this whole kind of epic feeling through the editing, which is key, and the way the film is shot. This is something I don't think it's on the level of say Lawrence of Arabia in that sense at all, but one, it doesn't have to be, and two, it's something that clearly David Lean, he never basically made a non-epic film after this. This was his first epic in this regard, it seems, and he never ever went back in the rest of his filmography to a film that wasn't an epic, a long film, but an epic in many regards. Of course, Lawrence of Arabia is one of the epics really for me, in every sense. Of course, he made Dr. Zhivago, he made Ryan's Daughter, and then of course his final film, Passage to India, I believe it was 1984. I've not seen that yet, of course, but I look forward to all these films. But it's just so interesting, of course, how he would start off. For example, some of his early films, Brief Encounter. Extremely short. One of the things, but just so different, and not an epic in any sense. Just so interesting how he kind of developed. Starting with this film here, how he never returned, to these other films. It's very, very interesting, and I think it's pretty amazing actually. He would make epic after epic, and this film is just a stunning film in every regard. And I think we'll wrap up there. I don't think this is a film that gets into my plus tiers. Not quite there, but very, very close, and it does get, Of course, 100%. This is a flat-out masterpiece, in my opinion. A one that you don't, someone that really creeps up on you as well. It's straight away just exceptional cinema, but it's one that really does its magic very, very, very gradually. This is not a film maybe like Lawrence of Arabia that kind of you could argue that the first half of that is even is the best of Lawrence of Arabia. Very interesting how people would compare the halves and stuff, but this film gradually builds and builds. It's not a film where there's this it's kind of got these explosive big set pieces early on. It's one that really builds and builds to its final act. You call all these threads that maybe I would understand if people got a bit lost at times, but I think it's just fully focused. That's just my opinion. I think I'm constantly just riveted by the characters, the different threads, of course, going on, and the way it's kind of intertwines. I love this so much, and the performances, of course, just amazing. Malcolm Arnold works on the music, of course, to this film. The Colonel Bogey March, of course, going all the way back to 1914, and that's used as basically the main theme, as we know. Everyone's heard it, even if you've not seen the film, you don't know it's from this film. Perhaps maybe you would have heard it. I feel it's very, very famous, and just that moment. I love that moment where, of course, Nicholson leads all of his men and stuff. They do the march and they start whistling, of course, and then it just comes into really wow. It builds into that kind of rousing moment. It's just a great moment that kind of sums up just the way that these men are not they're really determined. This is something that it says a lot just about humanity. It's not a biased film. It's not one that focuses perhaps on the British or anything, or the Americans or anything. It's the one that I feel is just kind of a well-rounded war film, and I want, of course, focusing on this specific kind of event in 1943, of course, and this bridge in Burma, and it's something that I just think it really is stunning. Perhaps if I pitched this to you and saying it's a film about these men building a bridge, and you've never kind of heard of people praising the film. If I just said that, it could be something that not everyone would kind of jump at the chance of seeing. But really, if you haven't seen the film, I'd say really give it a chance. I definitely think this is a film that I'd recommend to anyone who loves film. It's something that has a real effect, on me, and it's not a film that, while I love the film, it's not in my plus tiers purely because there are many films that I love more, and for example, connect to more, for by just even more than this, characters, emotionally, and stuff, and just epic feelings, or just personal feelings. I think this is not a film that quite gets into the plus tiers, but it is. If I had to say, it's one of them films that's kind of in that bracket that's maybe honourable mentions for my tier 3 rating kind of thing here, bracket. I think that's a bit of info for you there. But yes, overall a masterpiece for me. This is a film that I'd recommend to anyone. It's just a stunning film. Alec Guinness is absolutely stunning in this film. There's also comedy in the film, of course, as well. It's not a purely serious one, but it really is. This is a film that, once you've seen it, I'd love to see the comments on this and just how they reacted to the final act. It's the one that, I think the final act is quite, a bit better than the rest of the film had been. And it's something that rests on that final half an hour mainly. It really comes together so wonderfully, and you get every single kind of emotion there and different, the way it all culminates. It's very, very final, of course. A very, it is an absolute, kind of ending in that regard. There's nothing really ambiguous, but it's one that, it's very final. It's very kind of dead on. This is what's happened. But it does have different, complexities in just, maybe sympathy for different, element, different characters, different, different missions, different viewpoints. And I think, if war kind of, it's just stemming from differences in opinions, different ideals, and different viewpoints. And this is a film that really geniusly kind of ties that into the characters, into the kind of way the film ends and its structure, because you've got people, attempting different things here, different motivations, and just, I think, for the character of Nicholson to feel, the mixed emotions right before he dies, that moment there is key to the film. It kind of sums the film up actually, and just what has he done, what have I done, kind of thing, and the whole kind of the way he kind of refers to it as madness. That really does sum up war. I feel in a really just a very genius way. I feel in this regard, and I think just that last shot, wow, it really just lets you take it in. Perhaps this kind of whole overwhelming kind of final act. And I think just a stunning film. Wow, what a film! Performances across the board. It's a powerful film. That sums up just kind of different elements of this war, and this event, of course, as well. I think the whole way the kind of the final act comes together, and the actual destroying of the bridge, which of course actually happened. There's no CGI or anything here. It really is something to behold. It's one of them moments, just explosive moments that really, it's just unbelievable, really. And I just think the way this film is directed is perfect. I think not everyone will love the film, but it's a film that everyone should definitely check out. If you've been kind of thinking, should I watch this film? Or I want to watch this film eventually, kind of thing like that. I think go for it. Definitely, it's a unique film. It's it's one that really is very rewarding. One that kind of has a lot in this film. This is a film that kind of has so much going on. It's a big epic, of course, not on the level of Lawrence of Arabia, as I've said, but yes, just a stunning film, a masterpiece, in my opinion. And we'll get to the other films, of course, with David Lean. Of course, I especially look forward to talking about Lawrence of Arabia. I'm not going to say that's my favourite. We'll find out, of course. But yes, that's the film I think that's most. It's the one that I can talk about the most. So yes, this film though, as I've said, the first true epic in this series of epics that David Lean would forever make, and he never stopped. This is the 5 films, obviously here, and then 4 after this one that would all be epics. Lawrence of Arabia, The Doctor Zhivago, Ryan's Daughter, A Passage to India, all these films, and I'll be talking about them, of course, fairly soon. Over the next couple of months, I'll be going on this series here, and yes, just a masterpiece, this film. David Lean, I really think he's one of the best directors who ever lived. His way, visual storytelling, in this film as well, just absolutely stand out. I think he's in control. He knows how to kind of, really let things unravel, and kind of place emphasis on many different particular things, details. I feel this is a real detail film, and one that's it's an epic, but it's the small moments. I think these kind of gestures, moments that are really emotional, I feel, and just character moments perhaps, or just the way he kind of shows the environment. This is key, and I think The Bridge in the River Kwai is a masterpiece, and it's one of his great films for me, David Lean. And as always, thanks for watching my review.